What if I were to tell you that there was no such thing as traditional marriage? What if I were to tell you that romantic love, until very, very recently, was not a factor in marriage? That marriage was purely economic? That until recently, marriage was just a contract? Marriage was either a dowry contract, where the bride's father paid the groom to care for his daughter, or marriage was a contract between two individuals and their faith. But then, in the 16th century, King Henry VIII created the Church of England, the Anglican Church, and the church and the state merged into one. Then the state, being the king, could tell everyone who can marry and who can divorce, and decide the terms of that marriage and that divorce. Many people in England were unhappy with that king, was involved in their private decisions. Some, like the Pilgrims and the Quakers, fled England for America, seeking freedom to make choices of marriage and divorce without the state telling them what to do. After the American Revolution, freedom of religion was paramount, taking its place in the First Amendment to the Bill of Rights. So, if we had freedom of religion, how did our states get in charge of who can marry and who can divorce, and decide the terms of the marriage and the divorce? I'll explain. I'm Alan Cohen, Director of FreeFamily.org, a not-for-profit organization located in St. Louis, Missouri, and author of America Solved, a New Family for the 21st Century. So, how did we Americans lose our religious freedom? And how did our states get to control how we choose our mate and how our marriage might end? Like a child, our nation was born free. Americans would self-marry and self-divorce, or let their faith guide them in that decision. Then, in about 1825, America had a Christian revival. It was called the Second Great Awakening. Ironic, because America did not wake up, it closed its eyes to anything non-Christian. And just like that, the states in America had merged state and religion into one. We did not have a national religion, but we had state-sponsored religions. Each state was a Christian state. By the mid-19th century, the states started to regulate marriage. States got to decide who could marry and who could divorce, and dictated the terms to be married and to divorce. And states justified their power to regulate marriage not on American law, but on English law, a law that said women were property and were confined to their Christian role, and denied them the opportunity to enter the man's world, the world where men alone were the providers. Christian states also meant that our freedoms disappeared. Our freedom of speech disappeared, at least our freedom to speak out against Christianity. And if you believe we have a nanny state today, think of a government peering into your bedroom. Birth control was not Christian, and it was illegal. And God forbid, at least the states forbade, that a couple should marry outside their race, especially a white person marry a black person, because the former slave race was considered second-class persons at best. And, of course, women were confined by the threat of shaming and exclusion by other women in society. And in the 1800s, people did not travel far from their birthplaces. They were trapped, imprisoned by the rules in their hometown. Thus, traditional marriage, at least as some see it today, was only traditional marriage in England, not America. In America, in the late 19th century, as they are today, divorce laws are similar among the states in our union. Many states adopted something that would be called the fault system. In the fault system, a judge would listen to the gritty details of the marriage and decide whether there was cause for a divorce. The state, you see, knew what was best. Judges granted a divorce in the fault system only if they decided the marriage was broken, and if that the spouse not asking for the divorce through their conduct caused the breakdown of the marriage. Then in the mid-20th century, things changed again. If both spouses wanted to divorce and there was no breakdown, they would conspire and commit perjury to get the divorce. Conspiring couples turned divorce trials into a sham. It was time yet for another change in the divorce laws, and the no-fault divorce was born. Now, under the no-fault system, anyone could get a divorce for any reason. Fault was not required. Of course, divorce rates began to spiral out of control. Couples thought nothing of splitting up their houses and fighting over their children. Now, in the 21st century, things have changed yet again. The Supreme Court has decided the right to marry is paramount, that the state cannot deny same-sex couples the right to marry, that the state has no legitimate interest in deciding who can marry. It is solely the private decision between two consenting adults. So how then can the state have the power to regulate marriage and regulate divorce? After all, it is a decision between two consenting adults and their faith, if they have one. Freedom of religion means freedom to marry and to divorce under the rules of our own faith. After all, isn't that why our forefathers came to America? For separation of church and state, where we were free to choose our mates and how and when to end our marriages, free to raise our children as we see fit. It is past time we took back freedom. It is past time we ended state regulation of marriage and divorce and returned marriage to a private contract between two adults and their faith. Contact us and join the fight for freedom. I'm Alan Cohen for freefamily.org. Thank you for listening.